Here are my thoughts on chapter 21. Normally, I do these right after I read the chapter. So I read the chapter, I maybe look up some stuff, and then I give my thoughts. But for a while now, I've been running from crisis to crisis to crisis to crisis. And so I had like 2 or 3 different ones back to back right after recording chapter 21. So here I am, day and a half, 2 days later, saying, okay, these are my thoughts on chapter 21. Fortunately, I took down notes about what I was going to say. Now, my first thought was Clarke's Law. So there was a science fiction author, Arthur C. Clarke, who once wrote that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So here we have a clear case of this, written well before he said that, almost 100 years before he wrote that, where here you have all of these different things where the boss has seen and knows and lives with and is familiar with. The telephone, the railroad. That would seem like impossible magic to Sandy. And if he were to tell her about these things, she would assume it was magic. So here we have a perfect example of Clarke's Law. And previously, before, when he blew up Merlin's castle, that's simple demolition. That's gunpowder blowing stuff up. That's normal. But to them, it was magic. Now, another thing was following protocol, where these are people who live by rules, and they follow these rules, and they do what the rules say no matter what. And one of the quotes that stuck out of my mind so much that I wrote it down so I'd be able to recite it back. A departure from custom. That settled it. It was a nation capable of committing any crime but that. And there are instances in history where people followed tradition and followed protocol to hideous results, where people have died just because other people were following the procedure, and it's, this is the way that it's done. One of the things was World War II and the Nazis and the killing of the Jews. So people knew that horrible things were going on in England, or going on in Germany, going on in Poland, going on in Czechoslovakia. But what happened is all of these people were trying to emigrate, and they were Jews, and they were running away from being exterminated. But there were people who were like, nope, no papers, you can't come in. Even though everybody knew it was, I need the papers. And English has a great word for someone who just does the minimum and always obeys the rules, no matter how stupid they are. And that is Jobsworth. And this is an English word. Well, I say English as in coming from England here. So this is a word that came from England. And somebody would say, it's more than my job's worth to do it for you. Where it's like, hey, my job is worth more to me than your life, is worth more to me than your safety. And I am just doing my job. So Jobsworth is this insult of, he is someone who just does the bare minimum and always follows it. Now, my next thought was pilgrimages. Pilgrimages were this thing that people did. Still do. Was a thing that people do. And the idea is that they go on a difficult, perilous trek. Well, maybe not perilous, but they go on a difficult trek to demonstrate their faith, to build their faith. So people would often go on pilgrimages to holy sites. There are people who go on pilgrimages to Lourdes in France, where the Virgin Mary was spotted. There are people who go on pilgrimages to Rome. A lot of people from all sorts of religions go on pilgrimages to Jerusalem. Muslims, once in their life, are supposed to go on a pilgrimage to Mecca. One of the popular pilgrimage sites is Santiago de Compostela in Spain, where there is a path that leads there called the Way of St. James. There's actually a whole bunch of them. And Santiago is the Spanish for St. James. and I'm sure I've mentioned this in other ones, but it's this pilgrimage where it's a Catholic thing, but anyone is allowed to do it, where you go and you go on the pilgrimage and you walk from wherever to Santiago, which is where this magnificent cathedral was built. And it houses the relics, which are the bones of St. James, who died almost 2,000 years ago. He was the first apostle killed. He was killed 60-something, I think. But so almost 2,000 years ago, he died. Was killed by a Roman governor, just run through with a sword. And anyway, his bones are in Santiago in Spain. And so all of these pilgrims walk to Santiago. And up there is a copy of my Compostela, which is this sort of pass that you get when you get it before you go on the travel. And every place you stop, they have a little stamp and they stamp it. And the path goes from all over Europe down into this one town in Spain. So you have people coming from all over Europe walking. So they walk from wherever, or bicycle or horse, or most of them walk. And you have to walk at least 100 kilometers of it. So 100 kilometers isn't much. There are people who can do that in one day. I can't do that in one day. But anyway, I took 2 weeks and I walked from Porto, Portugal up to Santiago in Spain, which is just, a couple hundred miles walking north. Most people walk the way from France, the French route, which starts in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Pont and goes over the Pyrenees and then along Spain. And they mostly march west. There's like one route that comes in from the kind of northeast. But that's the English route, and that's really short. But anyway, go on these pilgrimages, and maybe one day when you're older, we'll go together. I'll take you. We'll walk. Once your parents agree to it, if your parents agree to it, or if not, once you turn 21, then we can go. Or 18, I guess. But anyway, so this is the pilgrimage, and people go on these pilgrimages to kind of refresh their souls, to think about these things. And the pilgrimage that he's talking about here, he refers to Chaucer. Now, Chaucer is one of the greatest English writers ever. He was actually one of the first English writers ever. He kind of codified what Middle English is. How Shakespeare made modern English, and invented, a huge amount of our words. Chaucer did the same thing 500 years earlier, and he wrote something called the Canterbury Tales. And the Canterbury Tales are a series of stories within a story, and it has as its framing device a whole bunch of people going on a pilgrimage. So you have all of these people going on a pilgrimage, and you have, I think there's 20 of them. And each one of them starts to tell their story as they're going on the pilgrimage. And this is who I am. I am the pardoner. I go around and I pardon people. Or I am the wife of Bath. I am a woman and I'm a wife. I'm married. I live in the town of Bath. And so all of these Canterbury Tales are all of these people on a pilgrimage to Canterbury, which once again has this magnificent cathedral. Finally, the people in the Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's court are on a pilgrimage to a miraculous fountain. Now, this is the type of thing that pilgrimages were typically done to, because if you have a miracle someplace, people get drawn to it. As I mentioned before, Lourdes, there were 3 young children who saw the Virgin Mary appear to them, Catholic France, so the Virgin Mary is a very important thing to them. So when she appeared to them, they set up a shrine there. And so people come from all over to go to Lourdes. Here you have this mysterious fountain where people, it's just like a rock that sprung out of water. which is a very biblical miracle. Happened a few times in Exodus. It's a very common thing to have happen because the Bible takes place in Israel. It takes place in Israel, the Holy Land, which is a fairly dry climate. And if you're wandering around in the desert and all of a sudden a rock starts bringing water, that's a miracle. It's more common for it to happen in England and in the east coast of the US because lots of porous limestone, lots of trapped rocks, sandstone, water gets in, water comes out. So springs are common here, somewhat common in England, but it still can look like a miraculous thing. And so here you have the font that all of these pilgrims are going to stopped. And they said it happened before when somebody built a tub and took a bath, which, yeah, kind of nasty that nobody bathed. But anyway, so it's like, okay, why is it stopped up? And the boss is sending away for stuff. And he says, yeah, one of the regular, 2 of the number 2s, 4 of the number 4s, and 3 of the number 6s, or something like that. I can't remember the numbers, but, and the accoutrements to go with it. So he wants the stuff to go with it, plus these numbers of the standard things. And to his luck, Merlin is already there, and Merlin is failing spectacularly. So I'm guessing he's calling for explosives, which means he's probably going to succeed spectacularly. Or at least fail in a very, very spectacular manner. We shall find out.